Hello, welcome to Liam's Library, a channel where we either review a book, a movie, or I just do some crazy fucking rant. Well, it's nearly the end of September, and I literally just finished this book. No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy. Now, you might know the name of that because there is a famous movie. Probably one of the greatest movies I've ever seen, and that's saying a lot. It's right up there with Jaws, The Exorcist, Indiana Jones, and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Duel, stuff like that. The movie is actually by the Coen brothers, and they did an amazing job. It's time to read the book. So, my brother bought this for me 2 weeks ago as an early birthday present because I've just been going on and on about it, and I've made him watch the movie over and over and over and over. I've made my girlfriend watch the movie over and over and over. Especially lately, like this year, I've just killed this movie by the Coen brothers. We are not going to talk about this movie. We really aren't, okay? That's a big thing. We're not talking about the movie. We are going to talk about the book, and we're going to do it right now. No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy. It's set in the 80s. It is a novel about America. It is an American novel. Americana, baby. Like American literature, which is my favourite. I'm an Australian man, but I'm sorry. The Americans are more entertaining than anybody on this planet. Except maybe the South Koreans when it comes to horror. Anyway, I digress, as I do. This book is really, really good, okay? It's set in 1980. It's about a drug deal gone wrong. It takes place in Texas. It has to do with Mexican drug cartel. It has a lot to do with human nature, and it has a lot to do with the country of America itself and how it is perceived by our characters in this book. Now, you know me, I don't really take that many notes, but I want this review to be a little bit more together than some of my other crazy reviews. So that's how many notes I've taken. Fuck all. But we're going to talk about characters, and we're going to talk about plot. So we'll start with plot. This is a story about a drug deal gone wrong. In the middle of the desert, in the desert of deserts in Texas, a whole bunch of people with a whole shitload of heroin, Mexican black tar heroin or something they call it, some shit like that, and somebody with a whole heap of money, about $4 million. Now, in this book, we don't actually get to see the drug deal gone wrong. It's already happened when this story starts. Now we meet our characters. We meet Llewellyn Moss. Now, Llewellyn Moss is a Vietnam War vet who is pretty much retired. He's a welder, so he does do a little bit of work here and there. He lives in a trailer with his wife, Carla Jean, who's a lot younger than him. I think Llewellyn's 36, Carla Jean's 21 or 22. He met her in like a Walmart. And you'll notice in this review, I do my stupid impressions of Texas voices, which I don't really know fuck all about because I've never been to the US, and I probably never will because of my criminal record. Bummer. I never get to go to a Chicago Comic-Con. Anyway, moving on. Llewellyn Moss, he's a Vietnam vet, and he pretty much just lives his life now because he did some terrible things in Vietnam, and Vietnam's over, and now he lives in Texas with his wife in a trailer, so they don't have much money. He does what he wants. He's out there shooting deer, and he shoots a deer, but he only gets it in the leg, and then he follows it, but then he finds another blood trail, and then he looks through his binoculars, and he sees a dog that's been shot in the leg, bleeding like a dog, like a big scary pit bull of a dog, just walking through the desert, dehydrated as fuck, heading in a different direction. So he follows the dog's back trail instead of following his deer, and he finds this drug deal gone wrong, and there's about 7 or 8 trucks out there. In America you call them trucks, in Australia we call them utes. So there's all these big old utes out there, and there's a big back there's shitloads of heroin in the back of one of the trucks, and there's dead bodies everywhere, and dead dogs, and guns, and bullet shell casings, and shit everywhere. So Llewellyn Moss, you know, he gets his gun out, you know, the rifle that has been used to killing deer, and he starts scouting the scene. And then we're reading along with him, and we start to work out that there's somebody missing. You know, the drugs are there's a whole bunch of dead bodies, there had to have been money, so where's the last man standing? So Llewellyn talks to himself a lot as we're reading this book. And he's talking to himself like, okay, where would I go? Where would I go? What would I do? And there's one guy half dead left, one Mexican guy half dead left in a ute. And Llewellyn steals his gun, and this guy's just sitting there in the sun like, agua, 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 meaning water. He wants water. And Llewellyn's like, I ain't got no water, man. And so he leaves the guy to pretty much dehydrate and die in this car, while he walks along with his binoculars and his rifle and a gun that he stole off, you know, the half-dead guy. And he goes to try to find the last hombre, the last man standing, thinking that there might be some money, there might be in this, but like it doesn't touch on it. But we know, like, you know, this book is subtle. It doesn't have to fucking tell us everything. We are following this story. We are reading it, and we are already intrigued. So as he's cruising along, he's talking to himself. And he's going through the desert, and he's sitting and he's waiting. And he's walking across the desert, and then he stops and he waits and he looks around. And he ends up finding this small little patch of trees right in the distance. And he has a look. And there's somebody sitting under the tree. And so he waits. He waits and waits and waits for a big old rotation of his watch. And the man isn't moving. So he's like, fuck, man, you're going to shoot my ass. But he can't help himself. He walks up and sees this man. And this man is dead. This man also has a briefcase. This man has a briefcase in between his legs. Llewellyn opens it. There's about, I'm just going to guess, because they never really go into detail. Well, they kind of do, but there's about $4 million in there. $4.5 million in this briefcase. And Llewellyn thinks to himself, this is it. This is my life now. He almost makes a decision without making a decision. And, you know, you people out there, I myself would steal this money. I would steal this money, and I would try to get away with it. I would try to pick up my beautiful girlfriend and my kid, and I would run off with $4.5 million, and I would try to make my life somewhere, because money does fix things. It fucking does. Let's not fuck around. So Llewellyn pretty much has already made his decision when he sees this money. Grabs the money and heads home to his wife, Carla Jean. Now, Carla Jean is a really cool character in this book. She's really fucking cool. She's very young, and she talks like this. And you know what, Llewellyn? You know, don't go ahead and don't go fall down apologizing now. Big talk. She's very funny. She's just very, very, very Texan. I might even be wrong. Like I told you, I don't know much. I know a lot about American film and literature, but I'm bad at the geography. But you know, the way this book is written, it's almost like written like you know, who's the guy that wrote Of Mice and Men? And the way Stephen King or Peter Straub will write a book, or even Richard Matheson, the characters talk how they would really talk in real life. So while you're reading their dialogue, you know, they're missing out words. They're missing out proper dictation. They're not talking the way that you would if you were trying to write, you know, some kind of, you know, really, like, you know, proper kind of a book. You know, they talk the way fucking people in this time and this country talk. And this part of the country. And so you feel like you're there. So we meet Carla Jean, and he comes home and he's just like, walks in with the big briefcase, the satchel. She's like, what's in the satchel? And he's like, oh, it's full of money. She's like, that'll be the day. And she doesn't fuck with him, but she fucks him a little bit. And you can see that, and straight away they have chemistry. They have this cool chemistry. You can picture these people, Llewellyn Moss and Carla Jean Moss. They haven't been married that long. She's a lot younger than him, but they've got this chemistry, and you like them. You fucking like them straight off the bat. He stashes the guns that he stole under the house. He takes his money. He tells her, get me a beer and let's go to bed. They go to bed, and then at about like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, he starts to think about the guy that he just left sitting in the car. That one dead guy. Now, this is the one bit that always fucked with me in this book. I'm sorry, maybe I'm just a lot colder than other people, but for $4 million, and you've decided that this is your life now. You are going to be rich, and you are going to escape, and you are going to get the fuck out of here, and you are just going to pretend that none of this happened and start clean slate and do it real fucking smart, because you have to be cold and you have to be brutal. But he doesn't. He fills up a 4-liter fucking water bottle to give this guy agua, water, and he gets in his fucking car and he drives down there. This guy's fucking dead. Why? Because the Mexicans have come back and they've gotten all their drugs out the back, big whole back of the ute just full of all this heroin, and they've taken it. So that's not there anymore, Llewellyn notices, and that guy's been shot through the head. As Llewellyn's looking around and fucking around, it's about 20 minutes before the sun's about to come up, the Mexicans come back. And he can see them up where he parked his truck and walked down. He's like, fuck. And, the thing is, he kind of knew this was going to happen. You don't go back to where you fucking stole $4 million. You fucking keep moving. So this is the one bit that did piss me off about this book. And so the pickup truck with all the Mexicans in it starts chasing him with a big spotlight and a gun. And he has to run and he has to jump off this thing and he gets buckshot in the back of his shoulder and he has to swim down a river. And he gets out of there. Thank fuck he gets out of there. But it's like he loses his shoes and he gets shot and he's walking through the desert the next day. And his feet are just bleeding and dripping. And then he finally gets home to where he stashed the money, the guns, and then he says, Carla Jean, baby, to his wife, we've got to get out of here. So I'm going to take off because I left my truck out there. And they're going to know who I am. Because he did. He parked his truck. They cut his tires. They took his VN plates off it. He's fucked. But that was always going to be the case. But he could have fucking done it a bit smarter. Sorry, I won't dwell on this anymore. Anyway, let's move along with the plot. So now he's on the run. He's not completely convinced that they'll come after her yet. He doesn't really know who he's dealing with. He's just thinking about, like, the present time. So he chucks her, I think, about $7,000 and says, pack your shit, you're going to your mum's in Odessa, wherever that is. Texas, I think. Odessa in Texas. He says, pack your shit, whatever you see, whatever you don't pack, you ain't going to see again. Excuse me. And so they both get on a bus. She goes to Odessa, and he takes the money. And he gets taxis, and he just sort of drives, and tries to secretly just get some hotels. He buys himself a big old shotgun, saws it off because he's a Vietnam vet, and we find out a lot later that he's really good with guns. Like, he used to be a sniper in the war, man. We find that out right at the end of the book. But it is important to know that Llewellyn Moss, you don't fuck with. Right? So he buys a big sawn-off shotgun. He saws it off, cleans it all up, buys this, stashes the money in like an air vent, like unscrews the vent, puts it in the hotel, rents the room next door just to make sure that when people come looking for him, he's not in the actual room and he's got some, home base advantage. So you can tell he's got some kind of fucking guerrilla fucking style, even though we're not talking jungle fighting here. We're talking about fucking, hotel and fucking crazy gunfighting, fucking cartel crazy shit. He's doing really well so far. Now we meet our antagonist. Now this man, this is another character we're going to talk about. His name is Anton Sugur. What do we know about Anton? This book introduces him as already being arrested. Now, we don't find out why he was arrested until way later. All we know is Anton Sugur has handcuffs and he's sitting in a sheriff's office in Texas. And while the deputy's sitting in front of him on the phone saying, no, this guy's very strange. He hasn't actually said anything. He hasn't done anything. He's just been sitting here. He came with me quite politely. You know, and we don't find out the backstory yet, so I'm not going to fucking go into that. But Anton, like, steps over his handcuffs, comes up behind the deputy, wraps it around the deputy's fucking neck, and then just jumps backwards on the floor and starts choking and sawing away at the deputy's throat, severing arteries and spraying blood everywhere and murdering this man and just controlling his breathing as if he's done this before, as if he's done this lots of times before. We now meet one of the baddest motherfuckers in any book ever written. Hannibal Lecter versus Anton Sugur. Hannibal better fucking run for the fucking hills, because Anton would fuck him up. Anton is also way more calm and has these weird principles that they are kind of hard to follow. Like, I get them. They're badass principles. Like, he doesn't show emotion, he doesn't give a fuck, and he just murders at will. Almost like Pai Mei from Kill Bill. He murders when he wants to, and it doesn't faze him. Who gives a fuck about human life? He just kills people. And that's how he gets along. And we don't get backstory of Anton. So what made him this way, we'll never know. Anyway, Anton Sugur is now the man in charge of finding where the money went. Not where the drugs went. They don't give a fuck about the Mexican drug cartel. This man is now hired to chase Llewellyn Moss and get that money back any way he can. So, and best believe, we now meet our cat and mouse, right? Now, our mouse is Llewellyn Moss, and he's amazing. Like, he's fucking smart, and we can relate to him. Anton speaks to the darkness inside us all. Like, could we really turn ourselves off like that and become a cold killing machine? Almost like the Terminator. And he's not even funny. He doesn't crack fucking jokes, man. He's the motherfucker you never want to ever meet. Ever. Like, ever in your entire life. Because you wouldn't exist ever again after meeting Anton Sugur. That's the whole point of this book. The bad guy is the baddest of the bad. But at the same time, the Mexican cartel also want the money, and there's the people who put up the money in the first place, and we keep that in the dark. So they are characters. So there's Anton Sugur, who wants to kill Llewellyn Moss. There's the Mexican drug mafia that want to kill Llewellyn Moss. There's, I'll get to this character in a second, but then there's the person who put up the thing in put up the whole deal in the first place. Some multi-millionaire fucking capitalist from America, some white guy who set this whole thing up and is now out product and money. We meet him briefly, but it's not really about him, but we know he exists. Now, let's meet another character who is probably the most important character in this entire story. The sheriff. The sheriff of this county where all this first went down. His name is Ed Tom Bell. Edward Thomas Bell, Sheriff Bell, or Ed Tom. Hey, Ed Tom. I don't know, Ed Tom. What are we going to do, Ed Tom? Ed Tom. Picture an old 57-year-old sheriff who's always doubted himself, doesn't like using his gun, and constantly just thinks about the world around him. This is the story. This is where the title No Country for Old Men comes from. It's Sheriff Bell. It's his life. It's his wife. It's him thinking about his father and his grandfather. It's him thinking about when he was in World War II. It's him thinking about how he doesn't deserve his war medals. It's him now dealing with this drug case and all these dead bodies out in the desert, and him following Llewellyn Moss and trying to follow the bad guy who's trying to kill Llewellyn Moss. And he's going to try to keep Llewellyn Moss alive, even though he's never really properly met this man. And every now and then we get these chapter break-ins. Well, more than every now and then. It's more about Sheriff Bell than it is about anybody. It's him observing this and explaining to us how he feels about this. And more often, how he feels about human nature. How he feels about God. How he feels about how humans feel when they see horrible death, blood, guts, war, God, drugs. What do we all think of? Well, fuck, everybody's an individual, and now we have to listen and read about what Sheriff Bell thinks about all this. That is the book. That is the start and the finish of this book, and it's really, really well written. So that is the plot. Now, will Llewellyn Moss make it? Will he escape with this $4.5 million? Or will Anton Sugur murder him? Or will the Mexicans murder him? Will he ever get back to his wife? Will this crime be solved by Sheriff Bell? I don't think I should give away the twist. What I will say is, it doesn't end how you think it will. It doesn't, and we get some really cool characters. We get some other Vietnam vet who gets hired to try to stop Anton Sugur and try to get the money back. We meet Carson Wells, but Carson is a little bit too confident, and he's not as smart as our protagonist and our antagonist, Llewellyn and Anton. So when Carson rocks up, he literally lasts about 20 pages. We get some cool stuff from him, but fucking Anton blows him away. And we get a bit of background on them, which is really cool, which you'll enjoy reading. What do we got? What do we got on my crazy notes? Okay, so the dialogue in this. This is my very, very first Cormac McCarthy book. I found out recently that he also wrote The Road. Now, I don't know if you remember that movie. It's like a post-apocalyptic film where like the world is ending, everybody's choking on ash, cannibals are very prominent, and what's his fucking name? The guy from Lord of the Rings. Anyway, I've got all the vowels and the letters in my head. Gorgo Vinsmerno. No, you know who I'm fucking talking about. Hang on 2 seconds. Sorry about that pause. I just had the funniest moment trying to work out the name of the guy from Lord of the Rings who's also in The Road. Viggo Mortensen. Fuck you. You should have heard the things I was coming up with telling myself. Viggo Mortensen, whatever the fuck his name is. Anyway, he's in another famous movie version of Cormac McCarthy's book, The Road. I didn't like The Road that much. I thought it was slow. I love slow burns, don't get me wrong. You know, one of my favourite movies of all time is The Witch, written and directed by Robert Eggers, which is the slowest of all burns, and people seem to hate it. I think it's a fucking masterpiece. No Country for Old Men, the film, by the Coen brothers, is most certainly not a slow burn. That movie punches you in the face, and you better appreciate it. The Road, actually, I think I only watched it the once when it first came out, but I will read it, I think, because this book was really cool. So my point was, the dialogue in this book, quotes. Every time you're telling someone about a setting, you can read it, you can read it, you can read it, and then somebody speaks, so you get the on either side. This doesn't have it. It almost feels like a draft, but which kind of lends the book some power. Like, we don't get the punctuation we're supposed to get. We don't get all that kind of stuff. Like, the characters really are talking like these people would talk. They're acting like the people from this country and this era would act. They really are 100% being themselves. And I think it most definitely works to this book's advantage. So, yeah, no, when I first started reading it, I'm like, okay, this is cool, but it's almost like I'm reading the draft to a screenplay. But by the time I got to the end, yeah, I was fine with it. So, I don't want to give it away, but there is a message in this book. Every time Sheriff Ed Tom Bell starts chatting, he's talking about the country. He's talking about wars. He's talking about God. He's talking about the belief in God. He's talking about giving up as a human or being strong. He's talking about maybe it's not just the dark nature of human nature. Maybe it's got something to do with the land and the history. But maybe not. Maybe it is just the fact that the older we get, the more confused we get, and we're not even... Buckle up, because it hasn't even fucking started yet. It's only going to get worse. People kill, and people do some crazy shit, and you get some really fucking random examples in this book. You get some really random side stories that have nothing to do with this book, but they're written in such a way that it doesn't slow down the narrative whatsoever. And it makes you realize what the message is, even if it is a kind of a muddled message, but it's not muddled. It's written in such a way that I get it. But it makes you think about how you feel, how I feel. When I read it, I was wondering, shit, do I feel this way? I have my own problems with religion. You know, we all know I do. And does it change when you get older? Will God come into your life? Will he not? And it's not even about religion. That's an afterthought. It's like wars. It's Vietnam. It's World War I. It even goes back to like the 1860s in America, where, you know, a lot of the frontiers people who just lived out there with their wives got shot and murdered by, you know, Comanche and, you know, the Comanche tribes that stole horses or bought horses, and guns and killed. But we don't get to find out much about that because it's not about them. That would be another story entirely. It's more about Sheriff Bell, and then he decides to retire at the end. Now, there's a lot of things about this book that I'm going to leave out, but I think I really should because it is worth your time. It is worth your attention. It really, really is. I'm stoked my brother got this for me for my birthday because I've been talking about it forever and I can't find it in any fucking bookstore. So he got it off the internet for me and he knew that I'd be so excited. I got it 2 weeks before my birthday. Like I said, I just finished it. It's not my birthday till next Wednesday. So what a legend my brother is. Shout out to Sean Cleek. Whoop whoop. Love you, Leonardo. Raphael Leonardo. Whoop whoop. But there is a bit at the end here where Sheriff Ed Tom talks about a dream he had with his father. And this is how the book ends. And it's written so well. We all remember dreams like this. Nothing crazy or over the top. It's a dream where he sees his father. His father's been dead by now. But he dreams about going to the same place his dad did. And at the end, his dad would be there. And we're not talking about alive. And we don't even know what we're talking about. Will it happen? It was just a dream. The dream was a dream. And Ed Tom thinks about everything. He thinks about people who were wrongly killed. He thinks about people that he could have saved. He thinks about people that might have the heart of darkness. Shout out to Joseph Conrad. And if this book didn't affect you, I'm sorry, but maybe you didn't read it right. Maybe you didn't take your time with it. It's not a very big book. Now, I will say this because I promised myself I'd save this for the end. I watched this Coen Brothers movie over and over again. So that when I picked this book up, I was hoping to find some little, like, some differences in it. You know, like you watch the movie It by Stephen King and then you read the fucking book. Do you know what I mean? I have so many examples it's not even fucking funny. You want to find something different in, like, okay, American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. I watched that movie over and over as a kid. Then I finally read the book. Holy shit. I actually wanted it to make sense at the end, which it made even less sense in the book. But fuck, was it different? Was it way more brutal and crazy? And there were so many things that didn't happen in the book, that didn't happen in the movie, that did. This isn't really like that. The Coen brothers, I think they realized that they had a great book here and the dialogue was perfect. So let's not fuck with something that isn't broken. Let's just make it and adapt it and bring it to the screen. So if you're going to read this book, prepare yourself because the movie is nearly word for word. Only 2 other stories I can think of like this are Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, Stephen King's novella, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, and then Frank Darabont made Shawshank Redemption. And then you have Stephen King's The Green Mile, the book, the serial novels, and then you have Frank Darabont's movie, The Green Mile, which is nearly word for word. Nearly. But this is way closer to word for word. So at the start, it kind of put me off. I'm like, no. Like, normally I'll get all shitty. I'll be like, no, this is nothing like the book. This is way too much like the movie. But that's not the fucking movie's fault. That's my fault for watching the fucking movie way too many times before I read a great, great novel. So shout out to Cormac McCarthy, because I'm probably going to read his other books, but I'll do it eventually. Now, it's time to go, because that's the review over. But guess what? October 1st is coming, and the entire month of October I will be doing as many Halloween reviews as I can. So that's it. It's Halloween after this review. Everything will be Halloween and horror and dark and scary and the very first one is going to be a corker. It's going to be the Japanese original version of Ju-On, The Grudge, by Takeshi Shimizu. And it's one of my scariest favorite horror movies ever, and I can't wait to talk about it with you. So look after one another. Read some great books. Watch some really good fucking movies. And don't ever, not once in your life, don't ever take any shit from anybody. I'll see you next time.